Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, team. It's good to see you. And welcome to everyone who has joined our next workshop, our next series, and our parent workshops this year. This morning, the team, along with myself, are going to talk about math placement at the elementary level as our students transition from 5th grade to 6th grade. So again, I'm welcome everyone for those of you who may be watching this live, or for those of you who may be watching it as a recording. We hope that you find this presentation informative. I am Linda Johnson, the Director of Elementary Education, and I am joined here this morning. Next slide, please, John. And I am joined here this morning with a team of math leaders, kindergarten through 12th grade, who I am going to ask to introduce themselves. And we'll start out with Jill.
Good morning. Thank you, Linda. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jill Cat-Cosin, and I'm the principal at Scotland Elementary School.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Jeff Corbishley. I'm the 612 Math and Science Supervisor here in the district. Previous role, I've been in the district quite some time. I was also the math department chair for many years. So I do have a good understanding of where all of this leads. And good morning and welcome.
Good morning. I'm Projecta Apple. I'm the math specialist at Branchville.
Hi, good morning. I'm Deirdre Rolfus. I'm a math specialist at Ridgeberry Elementary School and former 5th grade teacher.
Great, thanks everyone. Next slide. So as a math team, we are going to present information about the 5th to 6th grade math placement process for the 22-23 school year. You're going to hear us speak about the placement process and the data sources that we are using to establish criteria for placement into grade 6 math and grade 6 accelerated. You will also learn about the different math pathways that our students can take through their middle school experiences. And in terms of questions, we did send out a questionnaire ahead of this session through our district communication. It is also on the district YouTube channel. So please feel free to submit questions in real time if you're watching this live stream. We are going to monitor the questions as the presentation is going on. So if a question does come in during our presentation, we will answer it at the end of the presentation or at the end of this session. If the question is individual in nature, one of us will follow up through email after the presentation. And if you are watching a recording of this presentation, we will be leaving the questionnaire open for about a week or so. We will monitor the form and respond to questions as long as the form is open. And once again, if you did submit a question ahead of time, we may have included that information in our presentation as it might be information that is helpful for everyone. But again, if it was individual in nature, we have responded to you or we will respond to you soon. All right, so let's get started. Next slide. The first part of our presentation is going to focus on the process that is in place for math placement from 5th to 6th grade. We are also going to describe the timeline that we are following to implement the different components of the process that you're going to hear about this morning. Next slide. So as a district, our district math department, we have established a K12 District Committee that focused on our placement process at the elementary and middle school levels. This committee is a group of K12 representative of teachers, teacher leaders, and administrators who have met over the course of several months to create a placement process for this year going into next school year. The shared goal of this committee, the shared goal of our work, which was established very early on, was to create a process that places students into a course that best represents the math concepts and skills that they are ready to learn. And that's very important to us as educators here in Ridgefield, that we feel confident that the process, the criteria, the data points that we use really do fit the learner, and that the learner is placed into a course that represents their math abilities, skills, and needs at that time. Our process is also equitable for all students, and it is representative of the required skills and learning dispositions over the course of a school year. And you're going to hear a little bit more about those next. So what I will do is I'll turn it over to my colleague, Projecta, who is going to talk about the different assessments, and then we'll move it on to those learning dispositions. Projecta, and next slide. Thanks, John.
Today I'm going to talk about the description of the assessments. I think the most important thing to note is that we collect these data points from throughout the whole school year. So starting in September with their unit tests all the way through May. Some of these experiences are very familiar to them. They're question types that they've seen in their day-to-day work. They also, perform on NWEA, which is a standardized assessment that's adaptive. That is also familiar to students since they've been taking that assessment the last several years. The last assessment on there is the concepts and applications, and that one is more of a rigorous task, asks them to apply their understanding and their knowledge of concepts learned this year. But those question types are a little bit more complex, looking for their, emphasis of problem-solving skills. And I'll pass it to Deirdre.
Next slide, please. So the Journey of Independence looks at our fifth grade mathematicians throughout the course of the year. It considers student performance as indicators of success, and it's based on the 8 math practice standards, for example, make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. And we also look at the Ridgefield Public Schools vision of the graduate descriptors, for example, knowledgeable, independent learners who draw upon a wide range of skills for different purposes. While teachers are taking the journey to independence into consideration, they're thinking of a student's reasoning, precision, and an approach to complex problem solving as they rate their students. That said, as a fifth grade teacher, as former fifth grade teacher, another important aspect that we'd like to remember is that our students, our fifth grade students going into sixth grade, the transition is to middle school math, but it's also to a middle school. And we just like to keep that in the back of our minds when we think of what's best for our students. Next slide, please. So the timeline. As you can see, the timeline started in January with NWA administration that Projecta just spoke to. February, we have the parent workshop, which we are currently doing right now. April is the concepts and application tasks that Projecta also just spoke to. And then finally in May, the teachers look to complete the Journey to Independence, and they look at the data and make placement recommendations. When that is done, placement notification is sent electronically to parents. So now I'll just pass this to Jill to talk about the criteria. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Deirdre. At the elementary schools, the math team is currently in the process of collecting these points of data. As my colleagues Projecta and Deirdre have shared, some of the assessments, as well as the Journey for Independence, are still in the process of being completed. Our team will come together to establish the criteria once these data points have been collected. We will then take a look at the 7 data sources to determine eligibility for accelerated math. Once this criteria is established, it will be communicated with families this spring. Once the math placement communication is shared in May, parents who wish to review their child's data or placement are welcome to meet with their child's school-based math team to see if a waiver is an option for their child. Next slide, please. My colleague Jeff is now going to discuss the pathways for middle school mathematics.
Great, thanks, Jill. John, if you could go to the next slide. Okay, great. So here is a quick snapshot of our middle school math pathways through grades 6, 7, and 8. So first of all our courses in the middle school are directly aligned to our state's middle school and high school standards. And all courses expose students to different problems and instruction to help grow their fluency in working with numbers. They have students dive into concepts in addition to the skills, and all courses apply the math standards to real world situations. So you'll see on this graphic that we have 2 levels in grade 6. We have a Math 6, which are our grade level standards, and we have a Math 6 Accelerated, which include 6th grade standards, as well as some standards from grade 7. You'll see that Math 6 Accelerated will also help prepare some students for a high school level algebra course in grade 7. In grade 7, we have designed 3 courses to help students grow mathematically. We have our grade 7 math, which again is our grade level standards, our grade 7 math accelerated, which includes our grade 7 standards, as well as some additional grade 8 standards. And we have our algebra 7. This includes our grade 8 and our high school level Algebra 1 standards. So you'll see that this algebra course really covers 2 years of standards in one, and it is equivalent to our 9th grade Algebra 1 course. It also includes additional middle school standards. And this course would put a student on a path where they are 2 grade levels above grade level standards. Finally, in grade 8, we have our Math 8, which again is our grade level standards. We have our algebra course. This is equivalent to our high school Algebra 1 course. This course also does cover additional 8th grade standards. And finally, we have our geometry course. And this is equivalent to our geometry honors course that we offer at the high school level. So if you look at this graphic, our grade level math pathway in green is designed to really set students up for success in high school mathematics. Our other 2 pathways do the same, but you'll notice that they introduce high school level course content within the middle school. I think it's also important to note that our path where students take algebra in grade 7 and geometry in grade 8, it does introduce students to math content, as I said, a full 2 grade levels above our typical grade level standards. The other thing I want you to notice on this graphic is that we have arrows between our pathways. You'll notice that there's an exception to that double acceleration path as the students are taking high school level courses at that point. But you'll notice that our placement process really takes into account the ability to grow mathematically from one year to the next. So those arrows between those pathways indicates that there's always movement from one year to the next based on where students are in their math journey. John, could you go to the next slide, please? All right, and so again, this presentation is focused on our 5th grade families out there. So we wanted to give you a little bit of knowledge of what our 2 courses would look like in grade 6. So on the slide, you'll see that we have a Math 6, and as I said, a Math 6 Accelerated in the previous slide. Math 6 focuses on some really key areas. First of all, building student understanding of numbers. So that's where students will get introduced to fractions, decimals, percents, integers. And a key part of that is understanding the ordering of these numbers on a number line. How do they all interact together? They'll also have a building and understanding of numerical expressions and factors, how mathematical operations can be put together to form these expressions. A major concept for grade 6 is the understanding of a ratio and rate. In addition, we spend a lot of time focused on algebraic thinking. That includes expressions, basic equations, and they also get introduced to the coordinate plane, so a 2-dimensional way to represent points in space. Finally, you'll also notice that there's a little bit of geometry in our Math 6 course around area, surface area, volume. Our Math 6 Accelerated includes all of those same key priority standards, but also includes additional operations with numbers that extend to integers and rational numbers. Algebraic thinking also extends to inequalities in addition to equations. And the types of expressions, numbers, equations that students work with in the Math Accelerated course are more involved and they include more complex arrangements. So you'll notice that they all cover the 6th grade standards, but you'll see that in 6 Accelerated, we've included some additional math topics that represent the grade 7 standards. So at this point, I'm going to pass it back over to Linda.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, team. Everyone did a wonderful job. And John, next slide. So this is where we're going to finish it up. From this presentation, you have learned about the data sources and the criteria we will be using to determine placement for grade 6 math, or 6 Accelerated. And you also learned a little bit about the timeline that we are following. You also heard Jeff right now give a description of the 2 courses that are offered at the 6th grade level, as well as the pathways for math in grades 7 and 8. And as a result of this comprehensive placement process, we do believe that the majority of our students will find success in their math course placement. And just as Jeff mentioned, it is a fluid process. There is flexibility in terms of students' placement. We do take time in the fall of 6th grade to really get to know our mathematicians, get to know our learners. Our teachers will monitor our students closely in terms of the course placement that they are in. And if there is a need to adjust, to make any changes in placement at the beginning of 6th grade, our folks up at the middle school will reach out to parents, have conversations, and then determine collectively if there is a need to change a placement in 6th grade. And now it's time for questions. And again, just to sort of rewind there, for those of you who submitted questions prior to the presentation, we did reach out to you if you had an individual need. And if a question came in during the presentation, that is individual in nature, one of us will send an email to you. And a reminder, the form to submit questions will be open for the next week. So if a question does come to mind at the end of this presentation or while you're watching the recording, please don't hesitate to submit a question via that form, and we will get back to you. And we thank you so much for joining us and learning about our math placement process for our fifth graders as they continue on in their journey to middle school next year. Thank you.